Good morning, everyone. Good Friday morning. Thank God it's Friday. What I've got here is a book that I was mentioning yesterday that Christopher Hyatt and I wrote back in 1991 or something like that. And it was illustrated uh, by our friend, the late David P. Wilson, who uh, also at the time painted several of the cards of my design of the Tarot of Ceremonial Magic. And but David did the illustrations of many of the Goetic spirits in it, and I believe this book uh, is still available in several editions. So uh, be looking for it. It's New Falcon and Original Falcon still uh, publish that. Anyway, we're finishing up. Today, we're going to come to the conclusion. It's been 1 year, my friends, 1 year that we've been meeting every morning at 10 o'clock Pacific time. And what first started as uh, just an idea that to keep me from going completely bonkers during the sequestered quarantine pandemic has turned into something that's been very special and very important to me. And I thank you very much for being part of my morning family. And I will continue tomorrow with a new book, which is truly an old book. It's my Magic of Aleister Crowley, published by Weiser. So we will be starting that tomorrow. But right now we have to finish up this one, and we're on the appendices, which is very important to this book because it contains tons of the collateral material important to the understanding of the three branches of magic that Tarot Ceremonial Magick is the vehicle for. So we're on Appendix 4, Goetic Evocation. And we did the little first section of it yesterday. And today we're going to talk about the elements of Goetic Evocation. Now, just a few moments ago on my Facebook page here, just right down below, I printed some blow ups of or enlargements of my own personal design for Goetic triangle and circle setup. And I did that because what I'm just about to talk about is going to encourage you to also do the same. But anyway, elements of Goetic evocation. I'm on page 253 if you're following along. The circle and triangle are the two most important physical elements of a Goetic evocation and are considered indispensable. And it says see figure 27, 28, and 29, and I'm going to show you those. Right. I've got the really big, beautiful classic circle there from the Megaton. Plus, I've got Crowley's circle and a thelemic triangle. And I've got the pentagram and the hexagram of Solomon that gets pinned to your robe and things like that. Okay. The operator stands in the center of the circle, representative of the infinite universe and the magician's own aura. It is a place of balance and stability. The circle is protected by the divine names sacred to the magician. For the duration of the ceremony, the magician never steps outside the circle. The spirit is called forth into a triangle placed about 3 feet east of the circle. The base of the triangle is positioned toward the circle. The triangle is framed by 3 names considered holy to the magician. A copy of the spirit seal is placed inside the triangle, and another copy of the seal with the pentagram inscribed upon the reverse side is worn as a medallion around the neck of the magician. Upon the spirit's arrival, both sides of the medallion are displayed to the spirit to force it into obedience. The magician should also have a version of the hexagram of Solomon, I just showed it to you, printed or otherwise displayed somewhere upon his or her robe. Now I got a footnote to this that's very important because it deals with a very old and dear friend of the DuQuette family, Poke Runyon. Here's the footnote. A modern technique of Goetic evocation made popular by Carol Poke Runyon utilizes a black mirror or speculum in the triangle. The magician is positioned so that he or she can see his or her own face reflected in the speculum. When the spirit appears, it is through the distorted image of the magician's own face. Another Runyon technique has 2 people in the circle, an operator who recites the conjuration and directs the evocation, and a receiver who holds a candle in each hand and stands in front of the operator. The receiver alone gazes into the speculum and receives a vision, which he then dictates to a scribe. So that's another very practical technique. The magician must feel absolutely confident in his or her justification and ability to call the spirit. That's important, okay? If you don't have that confidence, you don't have what it takes to make this work. I'm going to say that again. The magician must feel absolutely confident in his or her justification and ability to call upon the spirit. In the classic text, the magician spends a great deal of time praising the greatness of God and itemizing all the miracles wrought by him through the holy personages of the past. You did it for Moses. You did it for Elijah. Won't you please do it for me? This shameless brown-nosing was very necessary to the medieval magician whose psyche was imprinted with a literal belief in biblical events, not to mention heaven and hell. The modern magician must achieve the same exalted feeling of divine justification in his or her own conjuration. The method will vary between individuals, but the result must be an unambiguous feeling of self-righteous justification. After this attitude is achieved, the next phase is to induce a subjective state of mind so that communication with the spirit does not seem to be an absurd, irrational occurrence. Okay, you got the justification down. I can do this. I'm allowed to do this. No, I'm empowered to do this. The next stage is to change your state of consciousness, to induce somehow or other a change in your consciousness. The next phase is to induce a subjective state of mind so that the communication with the spirit does not seem an absurd, irrational occurrence. This has to be done, this has been done traditionally by the recitation of the barbarous words of evocation. In other words, you babble these words of evocation until your mind sort of goes, you sort of purposefully and in a very controlled way make yourself go a little crazy. But a particular kind of craziness, a craziness whereby what's about to happen does not seem like an irrational event. Continuous babbling of these strange-sounding words serves to excite the magician's imagination and refocuses the mind to a sphere where communication with a demon is not an unthinkable activity. I've included at the end of this appendix a version of the preliminary invocation of the Goetia that contains the classic barbarous words of evocation. For years, my only conjuration was this invocation. In Aleister Crowley's personal copy of the Goetia, he transcribed the first Enochian call, leading some scholars to speculate that in his later years, Crowley discovered that the Enochian calls could be used for Goetic evocations. I have found that the recitation of the first and second Enochian calls in place of a more traditional conjurations and the barbarous words of evocation is indeed a most efficacious conjuration. It's been suggested that the proper state of mind can be attained through the ingestion of psychoactive substances. I hasten to caution the reader that even though I believe it's possible to access the magic plane by use of drugs, it is difficult, if not impossible, to properly execute the remaining necessary components of the ritual. In other words, you may be able to evoke a spirit while high, but then may discover it difficult to remember what exactly you wanted to do with it. This is a very dangerous place to be. Once you feel exalted and justified and have put yourself in the receptive state of mind, nothing remains but to call the spirit. No matter what technique is used, the power that accomplishes this is your will. Even though the original texts contain a series of progressively stronger conjurations and constraints, which are to be used if the spirit is reluctant to appear, it's my belief that if you're properly exalted and justified, the spirit will come without additional conjurations or curses. If you have a second or third or fourth conjuration ready because you're not confident that your first conjuration will work, then you'll most likely need them all. If, on the other hand, a spirit has promised to do something for you and fails, you're obligated to threaten it in a subsequent evocation. The ultimate threat is to destroy the spirit by burning its seal. This represents total annihilation of the spirit. To give the spirit a taste of this punishment, it is a traditional custom to put the seal in a small metal box, sometimes perforated with holes, with a small amount of sulfur at the bottom. Now, if you don't have a lot of sulfur, a good friend of ours, a Goetic magician, and hopefully he still watches this thing, James Kababik, who's now a great alchemist. James Kababik tells us burning rubber bands make a perfectly terrible smell. A chain should be attached to two sides of the box. Being careful not to step outside the circle, the magician uses the blade of the magical sword to suspend the box over a fire, kindled for this purpose and placed within the triangle, while he or she reminds the spirit of its obligation. Now remember, you told me you were going to do this and you didn't do it. It's pretty stinky in that little box, huh? Okay. If after this act of ceremonial intimidation the spirit still does not obey to your satisfaction, make good on your threat and destroy its seal. Let's see. Okay. Do not attempt to call that particular spirit ever again. It is a truly a case of if you're not for me, you're against me. And you can live without it. You may or may not actually see this spirit. You may only sense its presence. Once you know it is in the triangle, give it its order, which is called magically the magical charge. That's your orders. And demand that it agrees to comply. Be very precise in your wording of the charge and make sure there are no loopholes in your demands. Be polite. Do not dawdle or engage in any negotiations or arguments. You are the boss. The spirit should be told that if your wishes are met, you will be a kind master. You may state that if you're happy with its performance, you will engrave its seal in precious metal or otherwise immortalize its memory. Tell it that its spiritual status will be elevated even as yours is elevated. Do not fall for any suggestions from the spirit to give it offerings, sacrifices, or pacts. That is another kind of magic. Once you've given the spirit its charge and received assurance that it'll be done, then immediately give it license to depart, being careful to remind it that you want everything accomplished without any harm being done to you, your family, your friends, your pets, or your possessions, or anything else you can think of. The following is a summary outline of a Goetic evocation, but please avail yourself of the above-mentioned text before attempting the ceremony. Before beginning a Goetic evocation, ask yourself the following questions. Do I have a very good reason to raise the spirit? Do I feel absolutely justified and competent to perform the operation? Do I have a sufficient emotional tie to the object of the operation? If there is no such emotional link, the evocation will most likely fail. The desire to evoke a spirit must reach the emotional strata of the magician's psyche, for that is the abode of the Goetic spirits. Ask yourself, is it my unambiguous will to succeed in the operation? Ask yourself, do I have the courage to plumb the depths of hell to achieve my ends? Be brutally truthful with yourself. If there are any doubts as to your answers to any of these questions, cancel the ceremony or postpone it until such time as there are none. If you are resolute in your will to proceed, then do the following. 1. In a clean, uncluttered room, draw, tape, or otherwise make a circle approximately 9 feet in diameter. Upon the circle, write the divine names sacred to your personal form of spiritual discipline. 2. About 3 feet east of the circle, draw, tape, or otherwise make a triangle, each side measuring 2 1/2 to 3 feet. Upon the 3 sides, write words of power sacred to your personal form of spiritual discipline. 3. Inside the triangle, draw a circle. Within this circle, place an incense burner, incense, and a parchment or paper copy of the seal of the spirit you wish to invoke. 4. Prior to the ceremony, bathe with full intent of cleansing the body in preparation for this serious work. Put on a clean, magical robe reflective of your highest initiatory degree. This robe should also bear the image of the hexagram to identify with the macrocosm. Now, you don't have to embroider that or put a patch on. You can pin a piece of paper with it on. That'll be fine too. My hexagram is double stick taped to the front of my juror's badge when I did jury duty, and I walked out with it. And I just pinned it to my robe. Okay, arm yourself with the wand and wear the medallion displaying the spirit seal on one side and the pentagram to show mastery of the macrocosm on the other. Prior to entering the circle, purify the temple with water and consecrate it with fire. This can be done as elaborately or as simply as your sense of art demands. As with all aspects of magic. Entering the circle, first perform the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, which is included in this book. 7. Recite the preliminary invocation of the Goetia or the first and second Enochian call or the conjuration or conjurations of your choice. 8. Greet the spirit courteously upon its arrival. 9. Politely give it a specific, well thought out charge and demand a positive answer. 10. Politely give it license to depart, being careful to stipulate that it carry out its orders without harm to you or your loved ones. 11. Banish the temple with the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram and wait until such time as you cannot feel any residual of the spirit's presence. 12. Snap out of it. Do whatever it takes to return to everyday objective consciousness. If you still feel spooky and magical, banish again. 13. Break down the temple. 14. Failure of the spirit to perform as promised requires that you evoke the spirit again and issue a threat. Failing again, re-evoke and torment the spirit with the firebox. Failing again, re-evoke for the purpose of destroying the seal completely. 15. While the experience is fresh in your mind, sit down and write a detailed record of the operation. Okay. Final thoughts. on goetic evocation. For many, the above procedure may seem a childish excursion into role-playing, an adult Dungeons and Dragons. But isn't day-to-day life a role-playing game? Perhaps we should simply view goetic evocation as a formal, conscious dialogue and relationship between the conscious mind, the magician, and a portion of the unconscious mind, the spirit. The will of the magician to control the spirit is focused by the physical and mental preparations of the ceremony of evocation, and the spirit appears either objectively or subjectively upon the seal in the triangle. This vision alone serves to charge the seal by indelibly imprinting the magician's unconscious mind with that image. Years from now, the magician may forget that he or she has ever performed that particular evocation. But the unconscious mind will not forget. Once a spirit has been evoked, a permanent relationship is formed, which can only be severed if the magician chooses to update his or her unconscious mind with another imprinted image. This can be done ceremonially with the same care and preparation expended in the original evocation. A goetic spirit, once evoked, is an awakened giant, ready to serve you. You do not want to forget there is an awakened giant in the cellar. This is why one should never forget where he or she has put an activated seal. Traditionally, such items are stored in elaborately decorated or otherwise luxurious boxes or bags. Each time the magician's eyes fall upon the container, he or she is reminded of the evocation of the spirit and how the spirit is pledged to the magician's service. This conscious reinforcement of the relationship serves to recharge both the magician and the spirit. Every time you see or think about the seal housed in its special container, you should feel the same warmth of satisfaction as a dog's master feels when he or she is able to feed their loyal pet a special treat. Now, how do you share your good fortune and spiritual success with the spirit? This question can only be answered by each magician. I'm reminded of the old American cowboy movies where the hero rescues the girl and captures the bank robbers, but only after he has been pulled out of a deadly pool of quicksand by his faithful wonder horse. In the really old movies, the cowboy doesn't kiss the girl at the end of the film, he kisses his horse. In other words, give credit where credit is due. You must recognize that your evocation is linked to the spirit's evolution. This recognition can be private and entirely internalized. In my particular magical spiritual discipline, I seek union with a divine counterpart, which is called in Western Hermeticism the Holy Guardian Angel. By no stretch of the imagination have I yet to achieve complete communion with this being. Please remember this is written in 1991. But I have been vouchsafed glimpses in moments of ecstatic wonder when I realize, however briefly, that I am part of an unimaginably profound greater life. Using my metaphoric vocabulary, these moments are my holy guardian angel attempting to raise me up. To a goetic spirit, you are the holy guardian angel. I'll say that again. To a goetic spirit, You are the holy guardian angel. Just as there are people in the world who are so base and ignorant that they will end up this incarnation without ever being moved by a spiritual impulse, so too there are Goetic spirits who may not be ready to be calmed down enough to have a relationship with you. Only you will know the details of your relationship with the spirit, and only you will know how to share your good fortune and spiritual success. And that's the end of my comments there. Next section is I include the entire preliminary invocation of the Goetia, and then some illustrations. And Appendix 5 is that entire very short Crowley book that includes the seals of the mercurial genie and the Qliphoth that adorn the trump cards of the Tarot of Ceremonial Magic, and Liber 231, the sort of poem that goes with those genie, and the bibliography. Done. We're done with Tarot of Ceremonial Magick. If you don't have it, I would appreciate you buying it, even if you never read it. Tomorrow, everybody, we will start Magic of Aleister Crowley. Start your weekend right now. Go, go, go. But be good to yourself this weekend, and be good to each other. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will.